The reality that I've seen is that every founder needs to be a salesperson and has to plan on selling for at least 2 to 3 years. Other people's judgment don't matter at the end of it. What I'm hoping to help people with is to push themselves past boundaries that they thought. After chasing goals for so long, I recognized that goals were not kind of the answer towards happiness.
So let's start with your background. Could you walk us through the moment you decided to transition from being founder with 2 exits to becoming an investor? Like, what motivated this shift?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for me, like many of us, I've read a bunch of books and listened to a bunch of podcasts and, try to learn and grow. And one of the commonalities that I kept running into was, one of the stories that I heard was the CEO of Coca-Cola had made very high amount of money, something like $50 million in that previous year. But then the investor, Warren Buffett, had made closer to $1 billion off of Coca-Cola that previous year. And I think, recognizing that you can continue to build these companies if your goal is to continue to build wealth, though investment is probably the better path. You can obviously make good money being a founder, but a lot of times as a founder, you're not going to make good money the first couple of years at least, and then you're relying on some sort of big exit later to do that, versus investing has a lot bigger upside and potential when you can put your money to use. So I would try it out, but it was definitely a little bit of a learning curve so far. I think it's hard when you go from being decent at something like being an entrepreneur to being a beginner at investing and learning the hard way almost immediately. I've had some investments that didn't work out super quickly or at all. And so it's a little bit humbling to kind of start from zero, but it's also fun to kind of learn and grow in that way too.
What challenges did you face when you first launched Unfounded Ventures and Tribe HQ? How did your previous entrepreneurial experiences influence your approach?
I've always been more, I'm curious if this is the same for you, but I've always been more of like the bootstrap type of mentality. So very scrappy and lean. But when you look at it from an investment perspective, so our holding company, is investment portfolio, I still went at kind of lean of how much money I thought we would need to kind of go forward with investing and starting some businesses. And I think that I underestimated probably realistically how much it would need. It's just going to mean we're going to grow a little bit slower than we could. There was a lot of opportunity, and I think that there's probably more cost involved with that. So we're building it in a scrappy way still. It's a very almost like a bootstrap investment firm. I'd say that that's probably the biggest learning. And then for Tribe, maybe similar. I think that there's a lot of benefits to having a little bit more capital, at least to put towards marketing or towards the team. At the beginning, you're just doing a little bit of everything when you don't have that. Coming from having built a company up to 1,000 employees, I was used to maybe having teams to do a lot of the stuff. And so getting back into that where I'm just doing a little bit of everything is a challenge. Definitely, a little bit tough. I'm curious for you, do you prefer to come at it from, raising capital perspective or bootstrapping, your experience there?
It's a great question. I think it is very much choose your own adventure because they each come with their challenges. As you were saying that, I was thinking one challenge was, it's almost like Parkinson's law where, the amount of work, the timeline kind of dictates how long it takes to complete a project. With capital, you can sometimes lose sight of the value exchange. If it's very easy for you to cut a check, it might not be like the most efficient. Whereas I've seen the opposite side too, where people are reticent to delegate or to hire someone to do a job as well, or perhaps even better. It's really hard to kind of gauge that because you're projecting into an unknown. So I think I resonate with you kind of going back to a learner's mindset, or perhaps you always had this learner's mindset, because it is humbling to leave your domain of expertise and then go into becoming a beginner again. But the more comfortable you get with that, I think you're able, we spoke earlier a little bit about quantum computing and superposition. You're able to kind of be at both states and make these kind of decisions based on intuition more. And I think that's the only way I know how to do it, because it's not going to be perfect, but that's the only way that you can kind of see like it's probability distribution. Like this, I should probably delegate. And then I think it informs the decisions you have with investors when you do your capital raise, because I'm not saying like if you and I do that same process, it probably are the way that we communicate that to investors would probably be different. But they can tell, I think, if you've done the work, like if your story is authentic, like this is what I did, this is why, and they can kind of follow your thought process. I think that that's a more relatable kind of point of collaboration, because investors, I look at them as collaborators. I mean, maybe, different investors are looking for different levels of involvement, but they're collaborating with their money, which is a representation of time and value. So you're all stakeholders in the same aim. So yeah, I don't know if that was like a concise answer, of course, but I see them both having advantages and both having disadvantages.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I don't think there's a right or wrong way. A lot of people are really in one camp or the other, and I've done both, and both have pros and cons.
So starting with 0 members and limited background in building a peer community must have been daunting. What specific strategies helped you gain initial traction, and what would you do differently in hindsight?
I think a lot of the businesses that I've created have started with the idea instead of starting with the market. This time I started with the market. I had exited my previous company last year and really had an idea of what we were going to do from an investment perspective, but I also wanted to build some things under our portfolio and didn't quite know what I was going to do there. So I ended up giving away over 100 sessions to entrepreneurs of just feedback and ideas and advice sessions. And it was really a lot of just networking, met a lot of cool people, learned a lot of cool stuff, hopefully helped some people as well. But in there, at the end of those calls, I would just kind of get a gauge for what they were hoping to see. And there was some commonalities around wanting support and community. So I could see that the idea was there. Then when it started to come to my mind, I would sort of tell people about it at the end, and they're like, yeah, just sign me up once you're ready. So there was definitely like some needs there. I would say that the best way that I didn't even mean to go about this was just networking with a ton of entrepreneurs at the beginning of the year. And then later, once I finally rolled it out, had a bunch of people like kind of ready to go. So I didn't expect that to happen that way, but it was good. I think the other thing that I spent a lot of this year doing was building my social brand. Just had a little more time on my hands. In the past, I've been building companies and working 60, 70 hours a week and didn't really make time to post on socials very much. This year, I built a decent social following between a couple platforms. So that was helpful. That when I did launch it, we ended up having way more applications than I thought. So yeah, I think altogether now we've had like 700 or 800 applications, and definitely didn't think that was going to be the case. I honestly thought we'd start with maybe 5 to 10 members when we started this thing, and ended up being decently bigger than that so far. But I also compare upwards and see some of our competitors, and I still feel like we got a lot of room to grow.
So Tribe focuses on early to mid-stage entrepreneurs, which is an underserved market in these peer communities, as you and I spoke about previously. What key insights led you to choose this focus, and how does it shape your programs and community?
I think a few things led to this. First off, I still include myself in this early to mid-stage entrepreneur bucket. I don't know exactly why. I've had a couple exits and have scaled some companies, but I feel like I'm somewhere in there. And most of the people that I know can't afford the membership prices of some of these other cool ones that exist out there. And a lot of people are like, yeah, it sounds great. I want support. I want to learn. I want the network. But when it comes time to paying like 10K or more, it's really pricey for them, since most of them are actively building. And I think the misconception people have, even if you're building, let's say, $1 million business or a couple $1 million business, you're often not even close to making $1 million personally yet. And so your actual take home income is much, much lower. So yeah, I just wanted to build something that was more accessible, that gave all the same benefits, but potentially even more than that at a price point people could afford. I think the challenge there, and that we're realizing, is that there's reasons that they do charge higher prices. So for us, it has to be a scale game to get to a certain amount of members to kind of offset some of the costs, because there's a lot of costs involved in building a substantial membership organization, which we knew, but I think it's even more apparent. And luckily, I'm okay with sort of that bootstrap mentality of going it a little bit scrappier. But there's a lot of money in these other ones. So,
what types of communities or cities or like niches are you finding are underserved, if any?
I do think some of like the non-major cities are being underserved because there's all these groups exist and they're in person, they meet. So there's going to be a ton in California, a ton in Seattle and New York and some of these big cities, but maybe there's underserved markets in we're seeing in like Texas or North Carolina or Missouri, Florida. There's other spots that maybe aren't quite as heavily populated, and they have a lot more folks who are looking for that support. But yeah, I also think agencies and SMB owners, and then as well as SaaS founders. There's a lot of SaaS founders that have raised some money, but SaaS takes a long time to really get off the ground. And so a lot of the SaaS founders aren't doing tens of millions of dollars in sales yet. They might be, closer to $1 million, and they're just scraping by. And so they're looking for support as well. And they wouldn't qualify necessarily for some of these community organizations that are looking for more like 10 million net worth or things like that.
What innovations or unique approaches does Unfounded Ventures bring to the venture studio model that set it apart from traditional accelerators or venture funds?
I think a couple things is what I wanted to focus on. It's the same thing, like coming at it with more of like a bootstrap and scrappy mentality. It's being willing to roll up the sleeves and actually like get in there with our companies that we invest in and really play an active role to help them put their infrastructure in place. And then we also come at it from a scrappier mentality. So we do put money forward, but it's less. And it's to help these companies think a little bit scrappier instead of continually like burning cash and raising cash. So the whole thought was, can we help them put their infrastructure in place, save them years on learning a lot the hard way, give them a little bit of money to move forward, but ultimately give them something with our time, effort, energy, and network to move them forward faster.
You mentioned a viral post led to a surge in demand during the early days of Tribe HQ. How did you manage the sudden influx of interest, and what did you learn about scaling quickly under pressure?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good problem to have looking back in hindsight. But yeah, we had a post about Tribe, just basically saying, are you looking for, community as an entrepreneur? You're lonely, essentially. And that post did very well. Had, I think, thousands of views, I think hundreds of comments. We didn't even have a landing page up yet. So it was more just like, which wasn't thought out very well. It was more of, I was putting it out there to see what people would think about it as an idea. I wasn't trying to get them to sign up yet. But right away, tons of people were like, sign me up. And so that night, I spent all night, probably 10 hours overnight building the landing page and the website and getting the wait list going so that the very next day we could at least send that over to get their emails in. But yeah, being ready for the demand when you're going to put something out there is probably helpful. The other thing that didn't happen too well was we got all of these people that signed up for the wait list, but we weren't ready to launch yet. We had a lot of things to get ready for launch. And the longer you take from wait list to launch, I think the more opportunity you have to lose people. At the beginning, they're kind of bought in and they're excited about it. If you wait a month or two, they're going to maybe forget about it. And we just didn't have the infrastructure built. We had hundreds of people that signed up, but then when it came time to actually convert for applications, true applications, I think we might have had less than half of those people actually apply. It was still a lot, couple hundred, but yeah, it wasn't as much as we probably could have capitalized on at the beginning had we had everything ready to go. So
Tribe HQ is the website, tribehq.co. We'll put that link in the show notes as well as your socials. And really admire the work that you're doing. Congratulations on Tribe and best of luck in the 2025.
Thank you. You as well. Appreciate you.